So with the launch of Season 1 of Modern Warfare 3, there's been a various amounts of weapon buffs and nerfs, not only in the preseason, but also at the launch of Season 1 here. We've also got some new weapons introduced into the game. What I want to do is give you my personal top 5 favorite class setups, along with a couple of honorable mentions here in the game. Keep in mind, your list could be completely different from mine. For an example, I'm not a big fan of the burst weapons. It's just my personal preferences, of course, but I know a lot of people think they are the best weapons in the game. My list is going to be a little different than yours, and that's completely okay. That just means the weapon balance is actually in a very good place. So let's jump into my favorite setups. So I want to start in an honorable mention spot with the MTZ-762. The MTZ-762 reminds me a lot of the TAC V back from Modern Warfare 2, a very slow firing but high damage and manageable recoil. So it's definitely not in the meta in my opinion, but it's an extremely fun option and actually one of my most used weapons in the game. It seems very rewarding and feels absolutely awesome getting kills with this one. So starting the build in the stock category, you're going to want the EXF Close Quarters Assault Stock. So one of the biggest problems with the MTZ while leveling it up is it has quite a crazy vertical kick to it. Once you establish that and you start putting on attachments to control that, it is very easy to use. It kicks up and recenters basically by itself. There's not really all too much recoil to be controlled after adding all of the attachments. The stock here is going to give you recoil control and gun kick control, which we're going to go through here. Negative 14.6 to the gun kick control. Then we got negative 13.9% towards the horizontal recoil control and 14.1% to the vertical recoil control. So as you can see, it's a very big attachment in this particular build. Now for a rear grip, you're going to want the MTZ Factory Grip. I'm going to call this one in this particular build the optional attachment. So this is going to limit your recoil even more, but at the same time, it's not the most important recoil attachment in the build. If you want to go with this one where it's going to make your weapon a bit more mobile, you can do so. That's going to be the MTZ Aggressor Grip. But personally, I am using the Factory Rear Grip here, giving you fire aiming stability, gun kick control, and recoil control altogether. So statistics there, we got negative 10% to the gun kick control, negative 7.1% to the horizontal, and then we got negative 7.9% to the vertical recoil. Now for a magazine, I'm going with the 30 round mag. So this is the largest ammo capacity that we do end up having here with this weapon, and it only has 20 rounds in the original magazine. So honestly, I feel like this is a no-brainer. 20 bullets is just never really enough in my opinion. That 30 tends to still sometimes not be enough, but at the same time, if you're running the mag holster perk, which is going to basically be fast hands, I find that it does end up doing a very good job. If you end up using this as semi-auto, I see where 20 could be good enough, but I find a lot more success and I have a ton more fun with it while using it in full auto. Now over here to a muzzle, I've started experimenting with a lot of the Modern Warfare 2 muzzles because they actually seem to be a bit better in terms of recoil control than the Modern Warfare 3 ones, just simply because you're not taking off things like damage range. Now, keep in mind, you can swap this out for something like a suppressor if you want to, but I'm going to show you why I am going with the Tempest GH50 here. Looking at these percentages taken off, negative 27% to the gun kick control, negative 10% to the horizontal recoil control, and then negative 27% there again to the vertical recoil control. So this is going to be a very easy weapon to use when it comes down to overall recoil control with the attachments that we do have. And our last attachment, and probably the most important, is the MTZ Precision Blackthorn Barrel, giving you bullet velocity and damage range, aiming idle sway, and fire aiming stability. The big one there is going to be the damage range and bullet velocity. It is by default quite low, but by using this barrel, it's going to bring it up to 23.8 meters. I'm going to be honest, that's a pretty lackluster damage range, right? You're increasing it by 27% or 25% there. But when you look at the damage statistics on this one, your headshot damage is 58. So if you hit 3 straight headshots, it's a 3-shot kill. And then our upper torso and even lower torso damage is at 49, meaning that's a 4-shot kill. If you're someone that's very accurate and good at aiming high, this weapon is very good. Most of the assault rifles in this game takes 5 to 6 shots to kill. So even though it has a slower fire rate at 540 rounds per minute, the damage definitely makes up for it. And same with that damage range at the end of the day. Just because the damage range is a little lackluster, those overall damage values end up making up for it. Now, when I made my video on the MTZ, I claimed it to be the most underrated weapon in Modern Warfare 3, and I'm still going to stand by that. I don't see anybody use it, but I highly recommend some people do. Go in the game, just play around with this thing a little bit, especially with these attachments. It's super easy to use. It's not the most aggressive choice, But overall, at medium range, this thing's an absolute monster. Super fun. Just give it a try. Promise you won't be disappointed. Now, originally, I wasn't going to do a second honorable mention, but the WSP Swarm ended up receiving another buff. The reason this isn't in my top 5 is simply because it's kind of niche. It's only good on super small maps, like, for example, Shipment, and now Meat's added into the game, and then Skid Row. I just don't see it as a viable option on a lot of the maps in this game because they're so AR heavy. It's got a pretty bad damage range, but at close range, nothing can beat it. I'm pretty sure this thing beats shotguns at that point because of the fast fire rate. And then when you add some attachments onto it, it's got some low recoil as well. But the biggest downfall, of course, is going to be the maps, in my personal opinion. The reason it can't be higher on the list is just because you can't use it on a lot of the maps. It's a very situational weapon, I guess is the best way to put it. So we're going to start here with an optic. You don't have to run this if you don't want to. I personally like to run the slate reflector. You can go with a different optic or even the iron sights if you want to run something different. But I'm not a fan of the iron sights on this weapon. They're a bit too enclosed for me. But like I said, this is a preference. Run whatever you want. For the stock, you're going to want the FSS Fortress Heavy stock, giving you gun kick control, recoil control, fire aiming stability, and tac stand spread. I'm sure you've used this thing while leveling up. The recoil was absolutely horrendous, but by adding attachments like this, it becomes much more manageable, especially if you plan on taking a medium range gunfight. Let's be honest, you're not taking anything over something like 20 meters with this thing. You're just not going to win. But if in the event you have to take those gunfights, you do need some recoil control in the process. So this does a very good job of doing so. Diving into these statistics, negative 28.3% to the gun kick control. Then we got negative 23.3% towards the horizontal recoil control, and then negative 21.2% towards the vertical recoil control. So obviously this is a very important attachment when it comes down to this build. It gives you some large values in terms of recoil control. Now we have a magazine in the 50 round mag. This one you can go with whatever you want. I don't see any reason people would want to go with the 20 or 25 round mag, even the 40 round mag on that front, just because of how fast this weapon shoots. I've seen people use the 100 round mag. In my personal opinion, it does slow it down a bit too much for my liking. So the 50 is my sweet spot, but if you want to chuck on the 100 there, you definitely can do so. For muzzle, you're going to want the Stir 45 Sky Fury Compensator S. You can see it gives you 3 ticks towards the recoil control there at the sacrifice of aim down sight speed, which isn't a big deal. This weapon has a very generous aim down sight speed overall. It is a very small and compact weapon, meaning it's going to be a very mobile choice. So taking away a bit of aim down sight speed doesn't end up turning up to be a bit too big of a deal. So you can see here, negative 8% towards the horizontal recoil control and negative 10.9% towards the vertical recoil control. The stock was the main attachment to cover the recoil. I looked at a lot of muzzles and none of them seemed to do a better job than the stock, but we did need a bit more recoil control, so that's why I chose this one. And for our last attachment, it is going to be a barrel in the WSP Rackless 90 long barrel for that increase to the bullet velocity and damage range, giving you a little more recoil control and gun kick control along with aiming idle sway. But the bullet velocity and damage range is the big one here because it increases it a lot. 32% to your damage range, 23.8% to your bullet velocity. But as you can see, it's still only at 6 meters. I did say this weapon has a pretty lackluster damage range, and that's why it's kind of not in my top 5. So that 6 meter, sure, it's pretty bad. And it's there. Here's where the exception comes in when you're playing on small maps like Meat, Shipment, Skid Row. A lot of your gunfights are in those damage ranges, which means this thing's by far the best weapon to be using on those maps. Now we're covering our first weapon that has actually received a nerf here in Modern Warfare 3 in the Holger 5.56. That being said, I don't think the nerf really did all too much. It definitely brought it down my list a little bit because I believe the only thing that really got nerfed was aim down sight speed and then the headshot damage multiplier. Those were definitely big factors of the weapon, but I think it's just too versatile. It's a very high damage, low recoil assault rifle that's good at close, medium, and long range. I think it's obviously it's at number 5, so it's not. Starting with an optic, and once again, whenever I'm using an optic, it is always going to be a preference. If you have an optic you want to use, you can use that. If you like the iron sight, you can also use that. My particular choice on this one is going to be the MK3 reflector, however. So if you're willing to try my setup and you want to give this a try, feel free to do so. If not, no big deal. For a stock, you're going to want the RB Adel Assault Stock for recoil control and gun kick control. I've been playing a lot of this game, and what I can tell you is that a lot of the weapons have a large kick to them. It's not necessarily the recoil that ends up being the problem, but the gun kick control that ends up being the problem where people can't control it. So I've targeted a lot of my builds towards that overall gun kick control in general. and my weapons feel much better. That's exactly why I chose this stock here. Looking at those statistics, negative 9.4% towards the gun kick control, negative 12.7% towards the horizontal recoil control, and then negative 12% towards the vertical recoil control. Not overall large values, but it definitely does enough here. Now we're looking at a rear grip in the Morn 20 grip for flinch resistance, recoil control, and gun kick control. I don't need to explain the recoil and gun kick control, but that flinch resistance will 100% also help you in the long ranges while being shot at. It'll keep your shots nice and steady while shooting at people. Looking at the values, we are gaining a pretty consistent 10% through all of the recoil categories there, which is exactly why I'm choosing this one at the only sacrifice of ADS movement speed, which it hits at 21.3%, but it's still a very mobile option, especially if you're someone that likes to slide and you're not just sitting there holding your L2 button or LB, whatever you use to aim down sight. I still think it's pretty mobile. It's not the fastest paced weapon, so I didn't seem to notice all too much. In the muzzle category, I am using a suppressor with the monolithic suppressor. This is going to give you recoil control and keep you off of the minimap. I said this in the MTZ build there. You don't have to run a suppressor. You can go with a compensator if you want to target more recoil control. Some particular weapons I really like staying off of the minimap simply because it's easier to streak up, and the Holger 5.56 is one of those weapons. So you can go with this monolithic suppressor if you want to, or you could possibly go with an unsuppressed option in the form of a compensator, but monolithic is my choice. So the damage or the recoil values here are negative 4.8% and negative 3.8% towards horizontal and vertical. Nothing too crazy, but we are still gaining something while being suppressed on the map. Our last attachment is a barrel in the Trio 6 match. So this is what I think really puts the weapon over the top and keeps it in the top 5 is strictly this barrel alone. You get the bullet velocity and damage range, recoil control, and gun kick control. So it slows down the weapon a little bit, but let's just look at the values. You'll see exactly why. We are gaining 20% towards our damage range, bringing it up to 44.2 meters. Then you also have the bullet velocity at a 10.5% increase. Now, when you look at the damage range, it did say it's a high damage weapon, 54 base damage towards your headshot, and then our upper and lower torso is at 40 damage. So what is 4 times 4? 16. That's 160. So 40. You get the picture here. It's a 4-shot kill weapon. So with the headshot damage reduced, it technically should be still a 3-shot kill. I think that's the problem, though. When you have 44 meters and you have the ability to get 4-shot kills and sometimes even 3-shot kills, I think that's where this weapon really does become overpowered. It does require a little bit more accuracy than something like the MCW. It has a little bit more bounce to it. But I see why the pros took this out of the meta. They banned this from the competitive play. It makes a lot of sense, right? So there's all of your attachments on the screen. If you wanted to copy this one down, I definitely see a nerf coming to the Holger 5.56 again. It's not the most aggressive option, but it kind of controls the long range meta at the moment. And I could definitely see where this could be a very good Warzone meta as well. So we're going to be taking a look at an SMG that kind of performs like an assault rifle in the Striker. Obviously at launch, this thing was quite awful, but it has received a lot of crazy buffs to it. The damage range got buffed, the sprint to fire speed got buffed, the aim down sight speed got buffed. Now, it doesn't perform like your typical SMG, and that's kind of why I have it at number 4. It is kind of like a hybrid between an assault rifle and an SMG. When you face faster firing SMGs at close range, they are going to win. But when it comes down to damage range and taking... My game bugged out, give me a second. Basically, to sum up what I was saying, it doesn't perform like a typical SMG. It has a better damage range with a slower fire rate. So I kind of put this on the same scale as something like a Peacekeeper. At close range, you're probably going to get melted by something like the Rival 9, WSP Swarm. But at the same time, if you're in the proper damage range, it's going to outgun assault rifles at a certain distance. So keep that in mind. I like this weapon a lot, though. It's slower firing, and it doesn't feel like an SMG, but it's still very good. So let's start our build here with the Lockman Recon Series stock. So I was really put off by this attachment at first because you're kind of sacrificing a lot of movement. But yeah, there's a lot of recoil here, and it was kind of too hard to just walk away from. After testing all of the stocks, I felt the best with this one. You can see fire aiming stability, gun kick control, aiming out of sway, and recoil control is gained here, and we're not sacrificing aim down sight speed with it. So there's really no reason to not run it. Sure, your mobility's hit a little bit, but it's not like your typical SMG. Like I was saying, you're not up close and personal with people with this one. So Looking at these statistics, we got negative 24.8 towards your gun kick control, negative 12% towards the horizontal recoil control, and negative 10.9% towards the vertical recoil control. In the magazine slot, I have the 48 round mag. Now I'm going to come out and say it. You don't have to run this. You can go with the 30 round mag if you want to. It's really going to depend on your style of play and really what map you're playing. Smaller maps, I highly recommend a larger ammo capacity, but if you're on a map like Invasion, Karachi, yeah, you don't really need this 48 round mag. If you want to throw in an optic, maybe a laser sight, you can do that instead, but most cases, I am running the 48 round mag on this weapon. Now, for an underbarrel, we're going to have the FTAC MSP98 hand stop for aim walking speed, vertical recoil control, gun kick control, and movement speed. I absolutely adore this attachment because I get to gain some of my mobility back and get some recoil control. So it's not going to hit your recoil all too much, 5% towards your gun kick control and 7% towards your vertical recoil control. But the vertical recoil is the big one here because you're going to need to control some of that. For a muzzle, I have the normal Shadow Strike Suppressor. You can use really whatever you want. You could go with no muzzle at all. You could go with something that gives you recoil control and a compensator. You could go with the monolithic suppressor, so you're still suppressed and you're getting recoil control. This one is wide open. I personally like to use the Shadow Strike Suppressor, but this one is just about anything could be used if you really want it to be. In our last attachment, and 100% the most important, is going to be the Striker Recon Long Barrel. That's going to give you bullet velocity and damage range along with aiming idle sway. So the bullet velocity and damage range increases what's really going to make it perform like somewhat of an assault rifle. Looking at our base damage range here, our effective damage range is increased 18%. It's up to 11.4 meters. And then we also get our bullet velocity increased to 14.7 meters. So looking at your, overall effective damage range, you think 11.4 meters, that's not that great. But then you look at the damage. This thing's 39 damage for an SMG, which is utterly insane, along with that 46 headshot damage. So that's really why the weapon's that good. So the increase to the damage range, of course, made it that much better alongside of those base damage values. So once again, there's all my attachments on the screen. And as you can see, I titled the weapon #1 Striker, and I truly do believe that. #1 Striker build in the game. Most comfortable I've ever felt with the weapon is with this setup. Now at number 3, we have the Rival 9, the Pro SMG of choice. Now the reason I chose to put this over the Striker is simply because this is what the pros want to use. Clearly they see something, they feel it's the best SMG in the game, and it does exactly as described. Very good at close range, pretty low recoil, extremely fast fire rate. Now, I will personally say, the Rival 9 has been hit or miss for me, but that has a lot to do with the maps. I recently used it on Meat when it first came out, and holy smokes, this thing's absolutely ridiculous. But when it comes to those bigger size maps with the longer range sightlines and trying to navigate, it is a bit difficult to use, but that's just a map problem. That's not a weapon problem. The weapon does exactly as it's supposed to do. Now, we're going to start our build here with the rear grip in the Rival Vice Assault Grip, gun kick control, fire aiming stability, and recoil control at the sacrifice of no aim down sight speed. So this is going to help you a lot with the medium ranges, especially since you're going to be taking some medium range fights with the thing. So negative 10% towards gun kick control, negative 8% towards horizontal recoil control, and then negative 8.6 towards your vertical recoil control. And again, no sacrifice towards the aim down sight speed there. For magazine, I have the 40 round mag. As always, this is a preference. The weapon kind of shoots so fast, I like to have those extra bullets in the magazine. It's kind of a sense of security. You could go with the 50 round drum, or you could just take the magazine off altogether and go with the stock 30. If you want to maybe go with something like a laser sight, or maybe even a stock. For an underbarrel, we have the FTAC MSP98 hand stop. We're circling back to this thing. We just used it on the Striker, and I don't need to explain the attachment. Mobility and recoil control. What more could you ask for from the thing? I'm not even really going to talk about the statistics. We already talked about it. We got some recoil gun kick control and vertical recoil control gained with the attachment. For a muzzle, we're going to be circling back to another Modern Warfare 2 muzzle in the XRK Sandstorm, and I can't wait to show you the statistics of this dang muzzle. I think this one slipped through the freaking cracks. Negative 25.6% towards your gun kick control. That's number 1. Okay, so negative 10% towards your horizontal recoil control. That's all right. Negative 27% to the vertical recoil control. I think it slipped through the cracks. This muzzle, holy smokes. Yeah, use it. I don't have anything else to say about it. And our last attachment is the Rival C Clear Shot Barrel. I'm happy to see they have finally fixed this barrel, and it actually covers the camo that you choose to run with it. Bullet velocity, damage range, recoil control, aiming idle swag. It needed all of those things. Mainly the damage range and the bullet velocity, just to help you with medium range. but the other options just really aren't good in my opinion. Why take away damage range on a weapon that doesn't have great damage range? And sure, this one, again, it's taking away freaking damage range. This weapon needs an increase to the damage range. Don't run these other two barrels. So I highly recommend you pause the video if you guys are looking to copy these attachments down. If you haven't had the chance to do so already, you use it on meat. I'm telling you, it's absolutely insane. Use it on the smaller maps. Bruh, I like the rival a lot. I do. So we have the Bas B at number 2. Some of you may be surprised. Some of you may not be in shock at all, because I've seen a lot of various opinions about this weapon. I've heard people say they absolutely hate it, and I've heard people say they absolutely love it. I'm one of those that love it. And my class setup here has absolutely 0 recoil. Can't wait to get into these. Starting our build here with a stock in the Ravage 20 heavy stock. Gun kick control, recoil control, and fire aiming stability. If you remember earlier on in the video, I had stated that the gun kick control is a problem on a lot of the weapons. It's not just the recoil control. That's what we're targeting here. We're targeting that gun kick control more than anything else on the weapon. So statistics here, negative 20% to the gun kick control, negative 5.8% towards the horizontal recoil control, and negative 9.6 towards the vertical recoil control. You can see why I chose this one if we're targeting gun kick control. Magazine here, 30 round mag. The 20 just didn't seem to be enough in a lot of scenarios. The 45 round mag, personally, I think it slowed down the weapon too much, but it is preference as always. You don't have to run it. You can go with the 20 round mag or the 45 round mag. The 30 is my sweet spot here. For the underbarrel, I'm going with the Bruin Pivot Vertical Grip. This is going to play a large part in the vertical recoil of the weapon. So I've seen a lot of people use the angled grips on this thing, and I think that's the wrong choice. I think the vertical is much outweighing the horizontal recoil with this weapon, and the statistics show it. So if you see people running horizontal, you know, something like here, let's just take a look quickly. If you see someone running something like, let's just say the angled grip here, they're doing it wrong. Going back over to the pivot vertical grip here, what I can show you when it comes to this thing, look at the degrees per second based on the vertical to the horizontal. So the horizontal is at 17 and the vertical is at 45, which would tell you the vertical recoil much outweighs the horizontal. You should be using a vertical grip here. So looking at these statistics, negative 16% towards the gun kick control and negative 13.3% towards the vertical recoil control. Now for a muzzle, we have the Stir 45 Sky Fury Compensator L. 3 ticks towards your recoil control, pretty self-explanatory. So we're getting negative 16.6% towards horizontal, negative 13.5% towards the vertical recoil control. And as you saw, when it comes down to the recoil of the weapon, when I showed you that in the firing range, it's almost non-existent. It's very, very easy to use. And that's in big part actually due to the muzzle, the underbarrel, and the stock. And our last attachment is a barrel with the Bruin Venom long barrel, increasing your damage range and bullet velocity along with recoil control, gun kick control, and aiming idle sway. I used this one primarily for the damage range, however. The recoil control was nice, of course, but the damage range, it's going to increase it by 20%, bringing it up to 42.7 meters. And then our bullet velocity is increased 10.5%. We are gaining a few smaller values when it comes to recoil control, but overall that doesn't play a huge part in the weapon overall. I took care of basically all of your recoil needs when it comes to the muzzle and the underbarrel along with the stock. So we got all your attachments on the screen. Definitely a slower paced option. I'm not a slower paced player, but I really like this thing simply because of the high damage, and you can just get absolute feeds. I like to use this weapon a lot on Rust, probably my favorite Rust weapon when it comes down to it. You can swap the muzzle out for something like a suppressor if you're trying to stay off the mini-map, of course, if you want to, but I think you should give this one a try. I think you're going to enjoy it as much as I do. At number 1, we have the ACR or the MCW. There shouldn't be many surprises here. Virtually no recoil, very generous damage range, very fun weapon to use. My class setup is inspired by the pro players, specifically FaZe Celium. If you haven't seen my video on that, a lot of people have used it and given me positive feedback. I don't know what else to say. The ACR is back. If they nerf this thing, I'm going to be very disappointed because it's super fun to use. I don't need to explain the optics all too much. I'm running the MK3 reflector. You use what you want. You can use the iron sights. I feel like I don't need to explain that any further. MK3 reflector is my choice here. Now we're using our first ammunition type with this one, and that's going to be the 5.56 high grain rounds, giving you damage range and bullet velocity. So this is necessary because of an attachment I'm using later on in the build, and I'll show you why. So this is going to increase your bullet velocity and damage range 15%. You can see it's 15% respectively through every single one of those categories. And like I said, I'm using this simply because of something else later on in the build. For the underbarrel, I have the FTAC MSP 98 hand stop making another appearance. So 3 of my weapon builds have this attachment. You can tell how much I like it. Mobility and recoil control, nothing better. So I don't really need to look at the statistics because it's the same across all of the weapon platforms, but negative 5.9% towards the gun kick control, negative 6.8% towards the vertical recoil control. And we are at a muzzle, and this is why we needed to run those high grade rounds. I'm using the T51R billeted brake. We get a massive increase to your vertical recoil control with this attachment here, but unfortunately it does take away damage range, which is why we needed to add it back with the high grain rounds. But the large vertical increase is definitely worth it. So we're getting negative 22.5% towards your vertical recoil control, which this attachment virtually makes it shoot the straight line that it is. It's got no recoil because of this attachment and this attachment alone. And the last attachment shouldn't be a shock. It's the barrel that's going to give you the most damage range. It's got no recoil, so basically just increase the damage range, and that's where you're going to be. 3 ticks towards your bullet velocity and damage range. We got 2 ticks towards the aiming, idle, sway, and fire, aiming stability. So we got here 21.2% towards your damage range, and then 25.5% towards the bullet velocity. This is a medium and long range monster. Close range, you may have some problems, but it really only if you're running into SMGs, in my opinion. It's the best AR in the game, best weapon in the game. No debates whatsoever. I mean, there could be some debates, but in my opinion, it's the best. There's all of the attachments. Once again, if you guys want to copy them down, I feel like many people shouldn't be surprised that the ACR is at the #1 spot. Maybe are, I don't know. So that is my top 5 weapons, I guess top 7 in a way. I don't know. Top 5, sure. Those are my favorite weapon class setups in the game. I want you guys to go down in the comment section and let me know if your list is different than mine. If you guys want to go down in the comment section and drop your top 5 favorite weapons here in Modern Warfare 3, I'd be happy to hear you out and see what you're working with. If you guys want me to use any particular weapons here in Modern Warfare 3, make sure you guys go down in the comment section and let me know. I'll make some builds. I'll make sure to get videos out on the channel for you guys. Thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure you hit like and subscribe if you have not already. I'll see you guys in the next one.